Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crucial Conversations about Cognitive Diversity, brought to you by Bridges 2E Media and the 2E Centre for Research and Professional Development. My name is Maria Kennedy, and I have the pleasure of being your host. I am a mom, an educator, and a change maker who has had the pleasure of working globally with an array of different students and their families. Today, we have a unique opportunity to discover not only what services are available to assist our 2E students, but also how to access them. So, before we delve into today's topic, if you have any questions for today's guest, Dr. Tatiana, you can write them in the Q&A at any time. Remember, the sooner you submit them, the more likely we will have time to answer them. So, I'm delighted to share today's conversation with an amazing professional who works hard to ensure that people of all ages with learning differences have access to programs and services, regardless of disability, race, color, religion, nationality, age, gender, sexual orientation, citizenship, veteran, military, and socio-economic status. So, Dr. Tatiana is here to help us all. I am delighted to welcome my dear friend, Dr. Tatiana Cura, also known as Dr. Tatiana. So please, Dr. Tatiana, turn on your camera and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Tatiana, also known as Dr. Tatiana. Most of the families that I work with actually call me Dr. T. And I run self-determination programs, as well as I am the founder and owner of my own nonprofit organization called Skills. And Skills is actually where I partner with different professional athletes, entertainers, in helping to host events that raise mental and behavioral health awareness, breaking stigma, and making a large social impact.
That's awesome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. I know that you are so busy, and we really do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. You already mentioned like that stigma. So, if we'll talk today probably a lot about minority parents, parents of color, who often carry that stigma even more than other parents. But it is important that everybody knows that you work with everybody. So their race does not affect whether or not you will take time to help them. So for parents who maybe not only do they not know what they're entitled to, but they may be scared about even reaching out. So you've got a diagnosis. Where should you start?
Well, to be honest with you, actually, to answer that question, I would love to start off with how I got started in this business, which would help to answer that question. So, for example, for the past, I want to say when I started working, I was actually working in the nonprofit sector with another organization providing programs and services to under-resourced families. Now, I made a career change after those 10 years, after realizing, for example, that the issues were a lot deeper than poverty. And it's a lot like, for example, you could give a homeless man $1 million, but is he mentally, behaviorally ready, healthy, to be able to sustain or live a new, stable, and secure life with that $1 million? He could lose it in a few seconds if, of course, he hadn't had the right care, the right support. So with that being said, I moved into working in mental behavioral health for the past, I want to say 6 or 7 years now. I've done direct work. I've became a clinical case supervisor, clinical director. now owning my own business and founding my own nonprofit, because the mental and behavioral health issues are just something that I'm very passionate about, and that I know, for example, that our communities of color, especially in the communities of color, there's a great lack of information and access to these programs and services. So I guess to answer the question about how a family gets started, I mean, there are tons of resources out there. If you're noticing signs, one of the things that you want to do immediately is obviously to visit your doctor, make an appointment with your primary care physician, and either through health insurance, even regional centers, your school districts, there's tons of resources out there that many families come to me and don't really know how to navigate their journey. And that's really my whole purpose in this, my own journey, is really to help give the information to all of the families, the access, as well as help to make those informed decisions now that they've known there's a diagnosis in the family.
Sweet. So I've been to my doctor, I've talked to the LEA, we've got a neuropsych, they start talking to me about things called IEPs or IPPs. I'm already sinking and I'm lost. Can I deal with that all by myself? Is that something I should be navigating, or should I be seeking guidance from people who know more than me?
I definitely highly recommend seeking guidance, because just from experience, most of the families that I work with are extremely overwhelmed. I'll give an example with a family that I work with. For example, they are diagnosed somewhere between the ages of 0 and 3, which now requires early intervention. And of course, it's a very, emotional, mentally, emotionally, in every way possibly draining for a family once they find out, oh no, we have a real diagnosis in the family and I have no idea where to go from here. There really isn't so much information out there that's being promoted and kind of marketed. So I really do highly suggest and strongly recommend that you do seek some professional advice and get with someone that knows the systems, as well as all of the information that you can possibly get for you and your family, especially your children, so that you can make those informed decisions going forward. Because it's a long journey from there. I mean, for the rest of that child's life too, you go through early intervention. If you're going through regional center, there are also tons of services there: school age, transitional services, adult services, self-determination as well, that I'd love to talk about more. And then at some point as well, eventually they're going to start school, and you have to coordinate with the school district some type of contract that provides extra support and services to your child, which is the IEP process. You've also got the IPP, which is the individual program plan that you can access through the regional center, which we can also talk more about that. But there are so many programs, services, therapies, supports, contracts, different types of funding, that I just really feel like this is such a great opportunity to start talking about that now, regardless if you are from a community of color, whatever it is that your background is. You could be from a very wealthy, affluent family and still lack the information, still lack the access, and don't know how to navigate your journey now that there is a diagnosis.
Cool. So one of our kickoff questions, so it's the same thing that we're asked all the time. So they've given you the neuropsych, the school says your kid needs services, but what kind of person should you be looking for that's going to help you navigate through that system? Is it, are we just Googling advocates? Are we Googling, who are we Googling? What should we look out for?
Well, a lot of families who are strong advocates for their own children can very well go through this journey themselves. However, there's still lots of other information out there. So with that being said, I would definitely try and seek support from an advocate who definitely knows the systems of, for example, the school district, regional centers, even advocates when it comes to talking with your pediatrician, talking with your health insurances, because a lot of the reasons why we're not getting access to certain programs and services is because of the way things are funded, the lack of information, and also some families, they go out and they try to work with who we think we trust as professionals working within the school districts, regional centers, but they themselves sometimes either misinform. Now you're misinformed, you're not really sure if you made the right decision. So you really need to go with advocates that you know and you trust and have had experience in navigating those journeys, because it's as a family, very overwhelming. Again, emotionally draining, mentally exhausting. So you want to get with someone that you can feel supported by in helping navigate those journeys, because it's definitely, very, just a very stressful journey, and you for sure need somebody by your side, supporting and giving you the information. Also because most families, once now into this journey, they just don't have the information at all. They don't even know what information they don't know either. So you need to go with somebody that's educated, experienced, knows the systems, knows who to talk to, has connections, because that's really the only way you can make the most out of this journey. So definitely, I highly suggest getting with an advocate.
Cool. Are advocates normally, people who do that all the time, or do they have another job and they do advocating on the side? Is being an advocate a full-time job?
Well, I'll give you my experience as an advocate. I mean, for the past 5, 6 years, I've had most of my experience in mental behavioral health, but I also work as an advocate because I know, or I have so much knowledge with regards to, like, I have a clinical background. I have a strong educational background. I also know the systems and how things are funded. And all those things are so important when it comes to getting the right information and access for those programs and services that are right, or that are a right fit for your child. So I mean, I'm sure there are full-time advocates out there, but for myself, I kind of see myself as wearing multiple hats, because I also have that clinical background. For example, when it comes to the IEP process, there are lots of things that the school district might say you only have access to XYZ, but you want to have somebody there that also has a clinical background, because not all things make sense from a clinical perspective, but may make sense from a more educational perspective. So you want to have both, and you want to have somebody that really knows, again, not only the clinical or has the clinical perspective, but also understands educational systems, and how that may work best in coordinating all resources, all benefits, in the best interest of your kids and your family's journey.
Perfect. So I don't have a lot of money, everything costs so much money. Gas prices. I'm barely surviving putting petrol in the car, or gas in the car, as you Americans say. So who pays for this? Because is there funding? Am I expected to be paying out of pocket? How can I get these services when I'm on a limited income?
So I would definitely highly recommend seeking help and support through regional centers. It's a really great resource for our families, especially when in the beginning you're starting to notice behaviors, some type of developmental delays. You can definitely get an evaluation through regional centers, as well as if you're low income, you've got no money, or you're limited on financial resources, you can also definitely access some of these things through your own Medi-Cal insurance. But I would definitely start with regional center and applying there as a new consumer, because they'll definitely be able to connect you and coordinate services for a family that's limited on financial resources.
Cool. So we talk about things because we know what they are, but I'm a new parent. What's a regional center? How do I find one? What do they look like? Where are they?
Mm-hmm. So as a new parent, and actually it depends on where you live, but there are regional centers pretty much all across the state and nationwide. Every state in this country has a regional center. But of course, more specifically for California, because I live and I work here, I would highly suggest looking up your zip code, which actually I have a few resources that I'd love to share with people on how to, if I may, this is how you can look up your regional center based on your zip code. Should I just drop it in the chat?
Do you want to model it? You can share your screen if you want to model how to do it.
This is hang on one second. Actually, this is for everyone. Here's a link to look up your regional center. There it is.
Okay.
Okay. So yes, through the regional center, you can access evaluations, different programs and services, especially if you are limited, financially. It really just depends on where you live, and depending on, I'm so sorry, give me one second. Depending on where you live, you'll be able to get connected with that regional center. And so what is a regional center? So it's basically a place that, first of all, these are all state-funded programs where now the community, the public has access to these things that are funded through the Department of Developmental Services. So you want to apply and talk about those behavioral concerns or developmental delays, any learning differences and disabilities with the regional center, who can better connect you with, family support, behavioral intervention, all types of services that you can access through regional center.
Awesome. Now, we know, as with most things, some places are better at sharing information than others. So if you go to your regional center and they're not able to give you a list of services, is there somewhere else that you should go to check out what services are available?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually deal with this a lot, and a lot of families come to me thinking that they have all of the information, but as you mentioned, not everybody kind of conveys the same thing, even though, they just give information in different types of ways. So with that being said, what I would do is to definitely, again, get with an advocate, somebody that knows the systems, the different programs and services that are being offered, either through regional center, your school district, or even your health insurances. There are a lot of families out there that have no idea what their health plans are, who their doctor is, and you need support. So with that being said, please get with someone that is well-informed, like an advocate, that can give you all of the information, and also kind of what the processes are in gaining access to different programs and services. Because, and I say this only because a lot of families, for example, they'll feel very motivated to apply, and then because of a specific criteria or something, now they're being denied. So we don't want to feel rejection in this journey, of course. We want to feel like we're progressing and we're really supporting our kids and our families. So get with someone that really knows the information, again, the systems, and how to apply, what does that look like, and how to sustain services, because that's also extremely important.
Cool. So I know for those of us that might not be in the heart of California, or may already have just had an experience that didn't leave a good taste in our mouth, should we say? When you're looking, because you mentioned, somebody that you trust. My problem is I don't know anybody. So who do I trust? And if I've had a bad experience, then I'm really nervous about putting myself out there again. So do you have a list of advocates, Or should people reach out to you and so that either they can work with you or you could recommend people? Because I'm sure that in your network, you're connected to other people who maybe do the same thing as you.
Most definitely. I'm sure there are a long list of advocates out there, but I would love to share myself as a resource to everyone attending this meeting today. So I would love to share my information if anyone is looking for an advocate or just some additional information, access to different programs and services, regardless of your background, where you come from. This is not all just for communities of color, although we do know there is a great lack of information and access for that community. This is really for everyone. So I would love to share my website here, as well as my email address and a phone number that you can reach me.
So for those who are watching, so it's www.doctla.com and email is tatiana@doctla.com and her phone number is 818-252-9638. So Dr. T, so we've got this information, we're going forward for either an IEP or an IPP. Now, we've been in contact with the regional centre and we know that there are some services that we're entitled to. In California, there's the legislature, it's called they have a self-determination program. And I know other states have something similar. They may just call it something different. But what is a self-determination program?
That's a great question. So once you apply to be a regional center consumer, there are actually two ways that you can receive services. The first way would be that you can receive traditional services and you go through an IPP process, which is the individual program plan. When you finally go through your intake and you get assigned a service coordinator, they conduct a family interview, which they just ask, a ton of general questions, diagnoses, history, and things like that. And really their job is to kind of assess and see the different types of programs and services it is that they have within that regional center that they can offer to you as support for the family and the kids. With that being said, you are very limited though when it comes to regional center services because they only have, for example, programs and services and a long list of vendors that are specifically vendored to that regional center. Where most families, they just don't really like, being limited to the different programs and services it is that they have because they want to be able to choose different types of, service providers, different types of caregivers. So that's where self-determination comes into play here, which is the second option of being able to access services through the regional center. Now, through self-determination, you can access the same or fulfill the same goals in the IPP, but through self-determination, it's being, for example, you have these programs and services that were funded in your IPP. It then gets transferred or you go through a self-determination transition or process. And once you actually get into the self-determination program, you can access that same funding that you had as a traditional consumer to access different service providers that you choose that are much better or a better fit for your children. I'll give you an example. Right now, in mental behavioral health, there's a coalition for DIR floor time therapy. And there are a lot of families out there who don't know how to access floor time because it's not something that's being funded through health insurance or even some of our regional centers. However, floor time therapy can actually be accessed through your regional center if you are a self-determination program participant. A lot of families don't want to have ABA immediately because they know for a fact that their children are more sensory, challenged, if that makes sense. So they'd rather have a floor time approach versus ABA. So ABA, we know, is definitely medically funded, as well as it's being funded as early intervention within regional centers as well. But there are those families that, again, everybody's extremely different on the spectrum or whatever learning difference it is that you have. So with that being said, you should have, parent choice on how you want to approach your child's journey. Even as a family, how can you feel more supported with your child's specific needs, not like, we're just going to go to my pediatrician, they're going to immediately recommend ABA to me. However, you can definitely access different programs and services under self-determination that are a much better fit for you and your child, just like floor time. So again, there are different ways that you can access programs and services through the regional center, either as a traditional consumer or as a self-determination participant, which I definitely highly recommend. So those are the programs that I run under self-determination through the regional centers.
So that's great. So through self-determination, then you can access programs that you feel would be in the best interest of your child.
Correct.
So within their IPP or their IEP, if they need a particular thing, you could argue that instead of ABA, we want to do a more sensory program, and on your list of services that you offer this, or this other provider offers it. Can we get payment for it?
Yes, definitely. Actually, there's a long list of different programs and services that you can access through self-determination that regional center wouldn't normally fund. So for example, some of the things that are really popular are like technology services. Regional center wouldn't just say, okay, sure, we can pay for an iPad, but if this is a goal, for example, within our IPP and you're also a self-determination participant, there are ways that we could purchase this iPad, like an AAC device that supports that goal within the IPP. The journey into self-determination sounds extremely confusing, and it is, which is why I highly suggest and recommend that you definitely get with an advocate or somebody that they consider an independent facilitator, which is what I do within these self-determination programs, because there are tons of services, like I mentioned, that you can access through self-determination that regional center would not be funding. So for example, other than technology services, there are, like nutritional consultation, other forms of behavioral intervention, dental services, other psychology services. You can access lenses, vision care, those types of things. Under regional center, they're going to give you very basic, services like respite, but through self-determination, because I know the way things are funded, I can get you personal assistance, in-home daycare support, live-in caregivers, all types of things that are a better fit for that specific family. And again, you wouldn't have been able to access this as a traditional consumer regional center.
Wow. So the list of services, is that on the Department of Development Services website? So is that where we should be looking for those other things? Because trust me, I did not know we could get technology assistance for our students, particularly since on their plans it states that they need to be using assisted technology. Who knew?
So I'm actually going to drop another link in the chat where you can learn more about what self-determination is, how it's being funded through DDS. So that's another really great resource where you can learn more about the program, when it got started, how does it exactly work, and how you can access self-determination The first step, to be honest, is if you're already a regional center consumer, you need to get with your service coordinator and let them know you're interested in transitioning into self-determination. And then from there, there has to be some reporting that needs to be done. So for example, I will work with a traditional consumer of regional center, but I write their person-centered plans. And their person-centered plans are everything about that child, everything about that family, and all of the different programs and services that I would recommend through regional center, which then becomes part of the self-determination funding. And then you can access, different types of programs and services that are the best fit of best interest for that child and that family.
Awesome. So, so we're looking for an independent facilitator like you, right? So, is that what we Google, or is there anything else that we should add to that? And
go ahead.
And are these people, so a lot of our children are twice exceptional, right? So they have the gifts and they have the challenges. So do we know, are the regional center geared up for dealing with our neurodiverse population, or do they tend to only focus on the challenges of those students and not their gifts?
As long as you have a diagnosis, and a lot of families actually don't know this information as well. So if you're not already with Regional Center, I would highly suggest applying to become a consumer of their programs and services. And I only say this because if you have a diagnosis, for example, that is qualifying to receive programs and services through the Regional Center, you actually become a lifelong consumer, which means you have rights to these programs for the rest of your life, which is why self-determination is such a good program, especially for our twice exceptional kids that are ready to move on, beyond ABA. What's next? My children are getting older. How do I get them to become more independent? How do I find them jobs? How can they learn to earn money, pay their own bills, go to college, learn how to drive, and things like that? And those are all supports that you can access through self-determination. They definitely don't discriminate. I mean, it's Regional Center, just like myself. I would love to work with anyone and everyone, regardless of your background. And I've seen, more affluent families as well still be able to access Regional Center services as well. So, but definitely self-determination is a great program for our twice exceptional kids, especially because we're looking for that next step for our kids that are growing up now. They're much more independent, and we're looking for more, for example, like social skills therapy, adaptive skills, which focuses more on like self-care, those types of skills.
Awesome. So if you're in a different state, so we know in California it's the Department of Developmental Services, is that the same department in other states where you would go to look and see what version of self-determination they have?
Actually, no, it's not. I wish they were all called the same, to be honest with you, but within California, it's called the the Department of Developmental Services, but in different states, it's called something else. I think I was working with someone once that had asked me a question in Ohio, and it was called something like the Department of Disability Services, even though it's something completely different, or the title of the department is different. They still provide similarly the same services. But the thing is with these, state funded, federally funded programs, is that we have to know, first of all, the types of programs and services that they're offering depends on the demographic and the community needs. So just because we live in a specific area does not mean that the same regional center or the same department are going to be offering the same things. It depends on the demographic and the community need.
Awesome, cool. So we talked specifically about this IPP process and meeting the needs for the child, but one of our attendees reminded us that we need to not forget that what's going on with our little human affects more than just the individual human. It actually affects the whole family. So she told us not to forget about parent support groups, but through this self-determination, is there anything available for the family as a whole?
Yes, actually. So again, through Regional Center, they have to provide family support as well. So even as a traditional consumer, regardless if you are a self-determination participant or not, they actually have family supports like respite and personal assistance, in-home daycare support. These are all programs, services, and funding that a lot of families didn't even know about. And then going into self-determination, because we know kind of just what the work climate is right now, right? There's staff shortages everywhere, post-pandemic, quality of services has gone way down. A lot of us are struggling in business. So with that being said, self-determination is also a great option, because if you know someone personally that you trust, that you want to provide that additional care and family support to the family with a child that has that learning difference or disability, I mean, you can totally hire them as your direct staff, and even pay out at a higher rate to make sure that we have staff retention. So yes, self-determination is definitely great, but yes, through Regional Center, you can also access family support.
Nice, cool. Can you explain the difference between an IEP and an IPP?
Yes. So the IEP is the individual educational plan for your son or daughter, either with a diagnosis or not. But really, this is just a contract between you and the school that helps that student access the academic environment better. So sometimes that requires support. So if there are additional accommodations that need to be coordinated on campus, then they would need to do that for your child because it's in the IEP. So some of the most common things that I see some of my families have on their IEP is speech, occupational therapy, adaptive PE, as well as a resource specialist sometimes when they need extra time to be able to process, curriculum or anything like that that they are learning in school. The IPP itself is extremely different from the IEP because the IEP is only in the educational setting. The IPP is just in general now coming through the state. It's your individual program plan on how that regional center will be able to better support you and your family. And based on what they interview, they assess, there are different programs and services that they themselves can offer you through the regional center, like respite, like personal assistance, in-home daycare support. It really just depends on what the need is for that family.
Awesome. And like you said, once you're in that for life. So
yes.
That your IPP takes you on those steps. And so as your child becomes grown and wants to go out into the world, the IPP is still there to support and assist them in that transition.
Yes, absolutely. You become a lifelong consumer of programs and services within the regional center if you have a qualifying diagnosis.
Right. So, because I know most of us really focus on the IEP process, and I'm not sure that everybody realizes that that there is that next transition, that next step. So one of the questions is, can we ask the regional center to review an IPP?
So the IPP does come from the regional center, and if there are any disagreements with what's stated in the IPP, you can definitely ask them to review the IPP if there's something that you're seeing that you don't quite agree with, then yes, you can definitely ask them to review the IPP.
Okay. And as we know, obviously, our little humans grow and change. And so maybe there is something that they didn't need earlier on, but maybe now they need it because they're older, or vice versa, something that they needed when they were younger that they no longer need. Can we transition into something else that would be more useful?
Yes. So I actually would love to add on that because most families don't also know that the regional center provides services according to different age groups. So for example, from 0 to 3, you have your early intervention services. Beyond the age of 3, if they don't already have a diagnosis, they actually stop services at 3 and they move you on into the school district or your health insurance plan to start receiving services there. But the regional center also has additional services related to, for example, the school age, which is between like 3 and 12, transitional age from 13 to 17, and then adult services that are 18 and up. Now, again, not all regional centers offer the same things, but this is what I know that they also offer by age group. So, I mean, if you were receiving ABA in the past, for example, there's definitely still a long journey ahead and lots more programs and services that you can access for you and your family.
Cool. So just checking in, are IPPs a federally required thing like an IEP?
No, you don't have to, but it's a great resource.
So you would definitely recommend, though, that people get on that process so that they can.
Oh, absolutely. And I only say this because I love to use every resource possible in coordinating the benefits and really making the most out of everything that we have available for that family or for that child, because it's so important. Within, for example, coordinating services within the IEP, the IPP, as well as any services that you have going on funded through your health insurance. There's so many families out there, for example, that didn't realize that they could actually get 24/7 care. But if you just coordinate it correctly with all the resources that you have, I've had, clients with multiple diagnoses that absolutely need that 24/7 care format, but they weren't sure how exactly to put that together or coordinate all of those benefits in creating that 24/7 care for that child. So there are tons of ways to go about it. So yes, I hope that answers the question.
Definitely. So definitely, because what I'm getting is that that's one of those things that we've been missing. So our parents we're all aware of the IEP process because often that's where the first problems are identified when our children are in some form of educational environment. But most of us, me included, did not know that there are so many additional services if we sign up for this IPP process. And obviously it's fairly daunting, because as you said, it's just not a simple process, but understanding that that's definitely where we should be going because we're leaving services on the tables that we're not accessing. And I think for a lot of us, we have gone to the resource center when education or traditional schooling didn't work. And so, because I know for a fact that we've recommended people go to the resource center when their students need or when their child needs additional services like in-home behavior or a respite type activity, so where they're out of the home, but hadn't realized, should be telling everybody. So everybody needs to go to their regional center. So Google it, find your regional center and get on an IPP so that you can truly access all of these additional services that we probably don't have to pay for out of pocket, right? Because they're covered by federal funding or by your health insurance or some other program. And I think that's amazing news. I mean, that in itself is huge, because I know for a lot of parents wondering how they're going to pay for things is very worrying.
Yes, there are lots of challenges in this journey, especially post-pandemic. I mean, there's the lack of funding and then just the lack of information. Where do we get started, especially after the pandemic? And again, we're still dealing with the after effects of the staff shortages, quality of services, businesses shutting down. There's so many things. So I mean, I'm here. I would love to offer myself as a resource as well. If anybody has any questions, wants to get connected, needs to talk about whatever it is, IEPs, IPPs, your health insurance plans, doctors, anything like that. Because it really just takes someone that's knowledgeable, very experienced, wears multiple hats. As I mentioned, I not only have the clinical background, but I've been doing this for a while. And my doctorate is also in education, so I'm very well aware of the systems. My master's is actually in public administration, so I have a strong background in the way things are funded through the state and federal as well. So that's just kind of who I am, what kind of service it is that I provide, and how I'm out here trying to fill the gaps for the families that need the information and access to the programs and services.
That's awesome. So you see, you answered another question. What type of person do I need? They need a person like you, Dr. T. They need a person who has that educational background, who has that medical background, because particularly for our twice exceptional students, the gifts and the challenges often mask each other. And having a good understanding, both medically and academically, will definitely help highlight what kind of services their child will need and what kind of services they actually have access to. Because I think, as we keep saying, it's that lack of knowledge. And that's not our fault. We just don't know what we don't know. And often we don't find out until it is too late. I can't believe that I'm down to my last 8 minutes. I don't know where I went.
I know.
So we are fastly running out of time. Oh, there's an excellent question. I'm going to squeeze this one in.
Okay.
So if a student is in a private school, like mine, how does the family get their child the special services? So will they still qualify? Can they still go to the regional center? What do we do if you've opted to take your kid out of the public education sector?
So unfortunately, the IEP process is actually only being offered within school districts. That's something that is being contracted between the family and the school that that child is attending. So if your child is attending a private school, unfortunately, there are some private schools that will provide the accommodations, and then there are ones also that don't have the resources to be able to do that. So with that being said, I mean, if you are attending a private school, or your child is attending a private school, or you're looking to have your child attend a private school, but you know your child has needs also, I would highly suggest, definitely before you even apply, make sure that they have the resources, because how can we ensure that our child with needs is still accessing the academic environment? Also, parents are paying lots of money for this private school. And not all private schools have the same coordination, have the same services and supports for your kids.
Can they parents, though, still access the IPP process if their child is in a private school?
Yes.
Okay. So we haven't negated those other things, just that they may or may not access the academic support. And then what about children who are homeschooled? Because obviously the pandemic brought around a lot of homeschooling, and people learned quite a lot from the juggling, because we had to. We thought we couldn't do homeschooling. We thought that that was just a myth. And now we've discovered actually we can, and we can do it quite well. I say we, I'm not doing homeschooling, but homeschooling can be really, really effective. So if they are homeschooling, then can they still access special services? I guess the IEP one doesn't work, or does it?
Actually, again, not a lot of families know this, but there's a way that you can coordinate independent studies for your child through the IEP. And that's one way you can do homeschooling, is definitely have that on your IEP to opt for independent studies. The other way is, of course, some families just pay for homeschooling, and that's also an option. But either way, regardless if you are going through independent studies through your school district or a family is paying for home studies, you can still access support through regional center. That does not disqualify you from receiving other supports that would help that child do better in school.
That's awesome. See, I didn't know that either. Gosh, I have learned so much from you today, and I cannot thank you enough. You know, as a mom, although mine's grown now, as a mom, it's quite daunting trying to figure out what to do in the best interest of your child. And it's really wonderful to have people like you who are prepared to help parents navigate this very confusing situation. The assessment of how we get services. I mean, they tell us that we're entitled to it, but then they seem to be determined to make it as difficult as possible to actually access what you're entitled to. Doesn't make any sense to me. But Dr. T, like I said, I cannot thank you enough for being our guest today. It has just been so informative and actually really wonderful to be able to talk to you and for you to share your time with us today. I definitely recommend viewers that you reach out to Dr. T with further questions. She is a phenomenal resource and is really dedicated to helping our students be successful, not just in the classroom, but in their entire life, leading on to their independence and college, university or not, gap years, traveling the world, who knows what our amazing humans will be able to do. And so it's great to have your support, Dr. T. So please make sure that you reach out. I don't know where time seems to disappear to. I'm down to my last 3 minutes. Like I said, it's been a true pleasure helping our constituents, our consumers, our peeps find answers to their questions. I hope everybody has been inspired and will use Dr. T's recommendations. If Dr. Tatiana has made a difference to you and your family, or listening into this webcast has made a difference to you, please email me and share. Our email is crucialconversations@2ecenter.org. I also want to say a special thanks to John, who's working tirelessly behind the scenes. He truly is amazing. I cannot thank him enough for his hard work, his expertise, and most of all, his patience, because believe me, he really is the reason why this webcast even happens. So next month, we will also be gathering on the 15th. So it'll be March 15th. My guests, because I'll have two, my guests next month will be the chair of the Institute of Neurodiversity, short name ION. And so that is Charlotte Valeur, and her son Giles, who is an amazing musician. They are going to be talking to us about passion and about how finding your passion, seizing that passion and staying with it will help you to be successful. I know for a lot of us as parents, we wonder, what are our kids going to look like in the future? What are they going to be able to do? Well, Giles is again a walking, talking epitome of what can be done when we help our children find their passion, navigate their passion, and stay in the struggle. And so with 1 minute to go, Dr. Tatiana, is there anything that you would like to share with us just before we leave?
I mean, I think I've shared all of the links, but I just want to thank everyone for having me today. I was very excited about this opportunity to share all of the information. especially because it's very deep in my heart that I just want to help everyone and every family that doesn't yet have the information or how to gain access, how to navigate these journeys. So I'm really just here to help, and I just thank everyone for this opportunity. It means so much to me.
Thank you. Oh, one last comment. So somebody Googled IPP for their state and they got intensive program prison. That's not good. So what does IPP stand for? Maybe they should Google its full title.
Individual program plan.
Okay, so individual program plan, Google that, and hopefully we won't get the prison program. Dr. T, thank you so much. You are amazing. And everybody take care, be blessed, and come back and join me next month. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye.